Thank you, Sister Aisha, for the empowering words. So we heard it from three different perspectives, from legal policy perspective, from juristic perspective, and from historic perspective about Islam in the American context. So I'd like you to think about what makes the American context unique or different than other contexts. This is probably the most important part which we can get out of this panel discussion. What is the difference between the American context and the Turkish context? I just came in from visit to Turkey, and Turkish Islam is something very beautiful, similar to Saudi Islam or Syrian Islam or Sudanese Islam, but it has certain characteristics which you cannot find it in other countries. Turks are very tolerant. You go to a mosque in Turkey and people treat women very nicely, very openly. There is not this friction or tension about separation. Turks are very proud of their tradition. The architect of the Islamic the Turkish minaret is unique. So there is certain characteristics in the Turkish Islam that make it different than American Islam. So what makes American context different than the European Islam? So hopefully we can respond to some of these questions. So I'd like you to ask comments and questions to our panelists. You can step forward and talk to the microphone. If you have a question, please limit your comments to less than 1 minute. So think before you can speak. So we need to have more chances for as many people as possible to ask questions and comments. Yes.
It's not exactly the question. We have been for the last 40 years engaged in designing curriculum and writing textbooks and contextualizing. The contextualization has changed radically since 9/11, and we are revising, and we have also developed a complete system of education contextualized to Singapore, which is a modern pluralistic society. But my question, if I could design it as a question, is that most of the literature that we have inherited from our elders, like Sheikh Hassan al-Banna or Sayyid Maududi, Abul Hassan Nadwi, and all of that, had been written in the context of colonialism and our struggle against it. And that is what we have translated, we have been using and distributing in the churches and synagogues, and that has created difficulties and problems for us. Do you think there is a need and there should be an institutionalized effort that we write a whole genre of literature in which we present Islam in the context of America and the modern pluralistic society? We are doing it at the school level, but I think there's a great effort which is needed that we reverse that process where we are sitting around the table in the dialogue.
Thank you. Imam Majid, would you like to respond?
Definitely, I would like to emphasize that Muslims Americans have to write their own literature. But the heritage of Islam, the early Islam, has to be always looked into, because sometimes people think that when we say we like to write American context, that we are saying the life of the companions and after the companions are not relevant. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that you bring that life and relate it to this life. There's some literature that written as a response to colonization and so forth. It is not relevant to America. It's very important for all of us to understand when we write, for example, I'll give you another examples of relating Islam in American context. The issue of justice and fairness. Most of the sometimes Sunday schools and so forth literatures refer to those concepts of the past. We need to bring the concept of the past to the present. The life of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, and the companions, but to connect it to the American narrative. American narrative. That you need to talk about Dr. King marching on the street of America for equality of people. He's not a Muslim, but his story, it is very relevant to Islam and Muslims. The story of justice and fairness. When we talk about Malcolm X, when he talks about different figures in America that really have helped and shaped the American thinking in the issue of fairness and justice and so forth. What I'm saying that you need to connect to the past to the present all the time as we teach Islam. I'm 100% for literature written by American Muslims and deals with American context issues.
I want to direct my question to Mr. Abbas. I want to take issue with just one thing that you said, and of course I don't want to be disagreeable, I know we're on the same team, but you said that the Islamophobes are both intelligent and sincere believers that Muslims pose a threat to American society. Those things are mutually exclusive, okay? It's impossible for somebody to be intelligent and critical thinking and actually think that millions of well-educated Muslims who've been here for years are actually a threat to the United States. What I mean to suggest is this narrative of Islamophobia is something that is fabricated. And it's fabricated by journalists, pundits, and those who have an interest in affecting and implementing certain policies vis-a-vis the Middle East or in galvanizing certain voters in the United States, but it has no bearing to reality. Thus far, we have failed to challenge this narrative well enough. We've allowed it to seem as if there really may be some organic animosity between Muslims and the West, and have failed to be as explicit as we can in pointing out that this is a fabrication, that there's a lot of money involved, that people are getting paid to say these things, that an entire industry has emerged that is dedicated to demonizing Muslims. And we need to be more explicit about that. I just wanted to bring that up. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much for your comment. So I think when I said that they're intelligent, I think I'm referring to, I think it's realistic to say that they have been very effective. So they have taken this Arabic word, Sharia, that Americans had no encounters with, maybe more than, 18 months ago. And they have taken the word Sharia and brought it to a central location in American discourse. And that's unfortunately, they have been effective in that. I think, though, that in the challenge to Islamophobia, that there have been effective responses, and I think Tennessee has really been probably the best example of that, where there was an oblique threat to take something to court if it were to pass in its anti-Islamic form. But the community mobilized in a way that I don't think was precedented in anywhere else in the United States. In the Tennessee General Assembly, this past year, they had their standard teacher deunionization bill. They had immigration bills, but it was the anti-Sharia bill that filled the state capitol with Muslims. So they had hearings on Monday. On Friday, there were khutbahs throughout Tennessee denouncing the bill and educating the community that this is part of your faith, opposing things that are directed at preventing you from practicing. And I think that there has been the start of a very effective response.
Yes.
Assalamu alaikum. My name's Karen Danielson, and I wanted to compliment your talk, Sister Aisha, about establishing or finding evidence towards the presence of Muslims in America prior to Columbus. And I'll just give everyone a brief story. So this is a comment, and then I have a question afterwards. But a brief story. One day my husband asked me what was my mother's maiden name, and I had told him it's Abu Daqqa. And he said, Abu Daqqa? That's Arabic, Abu Daqqa. And I went online immediately, looked up the name, and found out that it was from Muslim Arab Spain. And her family went back to the late 1400s, early 1500s here in America. So as the Inquisition was forcing out the Muslims from Spain, my ancestry came to America. And that either predates or is around the same time, but there was a path anyway for Muslims to be here in the Americas prior to Columbus, prior to the slave movement, the influx of slaves and Muslims of that time as well. So that was a comment. I thought it was fascinating when I found that out, that I often wondered how my mother's family had forgotten completely that they were Arabs. They had only had the knowledge of being Spanish. They had also completely lost their ties to Islam and religion. And I had wondered, perhaps my great, who knows how many greats, grandfather had made a dua to keep this faith within, and that is why I myself became Muslim, and perhaps my mother also, who became a Muslim before she passed. So that's just my comment, and to supplement your wonderful talks, all of you. My question, however, goes to Imam Majid. Sorry. And it's regarding the fiqh. I've read the book of Taha Jabir al-Alwani, Fiqh of Minorities. And then I've read in Yusuf Qaradawi's Priorities of the West, or Priorities of the Islamic Movement in the West. Al-Alwani suggests that there is a fiqh of minorities separate from the classical fiqh text. And Yusuf Qaradawi suggests that the classical text of fiqh should incorporate this fiqh, not having two separate things. When I looked at Al-Alwani's text on fiqh, he was talking about Muslim minorities in the West, exclusively Muslims who are living as minorities in a non-Muslim culture. But isn't it true that, in fact, we are Muslims living in a non-Muslim global context? And shouldn't we somehow discover ways of interpreting, understanding, expanding, maybe you can further add to it, the fiqh of minorities from Muslims in a global context, rather than continuing to live in the dichotomy of the East, the West, the Muslim, the non-Muslim, the Dar al-Islam, Dar al-Harb, Dar al-Salam, Dar al-Kufr, you know, this dichotomy that is so looking like the you're either with us or against us mentality that we've all come to recognize the pitfalls of that. So please, could you expand? Thank you.
That's why in my talk, I said I would like to address the issue of fiqh in the broader context. Because I do believe that even this division of land and so forth, that there's a historical context into it. It is not relevant into the American context. That's why I would like you to think about fiqh in the broader sense. Because I think if a person, a Muslim, understands Islam in a broader sense, living in America, and identify himself as American Muslims, and understand this principle in this context, then he'll have no problem with all the other issues that he mentioned. I come to believe myself that the Muslims has to look into this heritage and the roots of Islamic classical books of fiqh, but you have to be also to be able to understand the emerging issues in the world today is not only to America, but to the Muslims around the world. I give you one example of this. A man walked in my office crying. And when I saw crying, and I gave him a glass of water and I said, please sit down. I thought maybe somebody died or somebody in the family. Something horrible have happened. And I have him too sad. When he sat down, he said, I want to tell you that my wife is pregnant. Okay? He is choking. He couldn't complete. And I said, about to say wonderful, but I said, no, let him complete the sentence. He said, my wife is pregnant with a child, is not mine. The sentence is not complete. I left my desk, sat next to him, put my hand around him, comfort him, and to say, just talk to me, inshallah, everything will be okay. We need to talk about it and so forth. To give him the comfort, because we should not jump to conclusion in any counseling session. And I said, tell me, what is upsetting you? What came about and so forth and so on. He says, my wife is pregnant with a child of not mine, but with my approval. Is it getting complicated now? With his approval. And now I'm regretting it. I said, how is your approval? He said, my sister-in-law cannot have a child. And my wife accepted to be the mother that will carry the child, surrogate mother. For me, it's completely new to me. He did something, he and his wife, so it is noble. And it is, in principle, you think of it. Please don't debate fiqh with me on this issue. I'm just talking to you in the other context of this. Meaning that I'm still struggling with some of the aspects of this. You know, I'm here to open discussions for you to think about it, not come to conclusion myself. The first thing I said, you and your wife, your intention is great. You want to help his sister-in-law, she's married, she and her husband, this is their baby, they planted the baby in her womb. You hear what I'm saying? This is not, sister, this is not about American context. This is about new issue emerge around the world. There's certain issue that we think that is only pertain to Muslims in America. That's why, in that regard, it's called fiqh in general, of emerging issues that have not taken place before. But the fiqh that I was talking about earlier, the fiqh of connecting Islam to the Muslim identity in America, our neighborhood, our surrounding, even how our masjid look like. If you come to Adam Center, the biggest room in the Adam Center is a basketball court. There where people play and pray, or use it on Friday. Therefore, even our look, how the Muslims, the Maliki Muslim scholars, when they left Medina and went to Spain, they changed the designing of the mosque based on being in Andalus at the time. So that's what I meant by this, a broader sense. I didn't mean to, I don't know if you hear what I'm saying about this, the broader sense.
I just wanted to add that I was looking more along the lines of, for example, how Muslims in America have to find measures to maintain peaceful coexistence, and that's a process of fiqh. So I'm wondering, do we not, as a global community, a global minority, not only also have to do the same thing, that we have to find peaceful measures to coexist?
Yeah, absolutely. But you see, when people start and say, is it halal or haram to exchange gifts with a person who have other faith? They need just to look to Islam itself, the heritage of Islam, where the Prophet exchanged gifts, where the companions exchanged gifts. It is important for us that the question of identity sometimes comes from a cultural context, not religious context. A person says, I'm from Sudan. How can, as a Sudanese now live in America, apply Islam in American context? Not how can get to change the fiqh, to change the understanding of the environment that's around.
I have to maintain some control on here. We have only a time for one more question because we have the next panel coming. And brother was waiting patiently, so maybe you can take the questions offline after this session ends. Sure. It's only, you want to start with your comment and then he will have his question.
The only comment that I had is God in Quran says that all you need is Quran.
You're going to speak up on the microphones?
Sure. God in Quran says that all we need is Quran. Islam is unique, and Quran is unique, and Quran and Islam is the religion for all the people and all the times. And the only thing that kind of comment that I wanted to make, Ms. Aisha, you talked about the words that we are using, and and unfortunately I heard the Turkish Islam, like you used that, and I don't know, like Saudi Islam. My belief is Islam is only one, and we have to make it together, not to break it down. Let's not be our own enemy.
Okay.
Like
Okay, let's hear the
we
question.
three got the same question, so
Okay.
go ahead.
Assalamu alaikum. Okay, Imam Majid, sorry. Okay, you were talking about Imam Shafi'i when he was in Iraq, and then he went to Masr, and he changed the context.
He changed his fatwa, his opinions, Islamic opinion, Islamic ruling.
Can you give me an example real quick?
Yes. Imam Shafi'i, when he was in Iraq, he was asked about certain aspects of dealing, selling and buying in Iraq. And when he come to Egypt, he changed his fatwa. If you would like, after the discussions, I can tell you where to go for called fiqh al-jadid or fiqh al-qadim Imam Shafi'i.
Okay, so in general,
If you wanna
what I understood in general, I'm going to try to make it summarized, yeah. In general, what I understood when you brought that up, because I know that we're here talking about Islam in America, was that Islam could be somewhat tweaked or adjusted to work in America. That's what I understood. But in my understanding of Islam is that Islam is from the Quran, from Allah. There's one book, Quran, and we have the Sunnah of Muhammad alayhi salatu wasalam. And there's no other way. We have to follow this, and this also relates to what he was saying when you mentioned Syrian Islam, Turkish Islam, and all this. Really, my understanding of Islam is that there's one Islam, and actually even one true religion, Islam. And Allah gave us the proof, more than enough proof in the Quran, whether it's scientific proofs or the linguistics. And that's why there's thousands of Americans that are reverting, actually, rather not converting, to Islam, because in general you're born Muslim. So we have the Quran and the Sunnah, and there's only one Islam, and there shouldn't be different. You can't say Syrian Islam or Turkish Islam. Maybe they, in their specific country, they may be doing it wrong. Maybe they have the wrong concept. But really, there's only one.
Yeah, I might respond. Let me
Go ahead.
just respond that very quickly.
Imam Majid, I think this is very, if you can sit down, I think your
I want to
point is
hear
well
his
taken.
response, if
Yes,
you don't
we will
mind.
we will hear it.
Okay.
If you can sit down. This is very important question, because you hear this many times, that there is only one pure Islam.
Yes.
We have the Quran, we have the Sunnah, it's not going to change. So how come we're talking about different Islams or different adaptation of Islam?
Let me tell you something.
And about the tweaking and the
yes,
adjusting.
yes.
That's another thing.
I'm going to respond. Yes. There's a myth about, somebody said to me one time, he said, I called Imam Abu Hanifa. He said, I don't have to listen to Imam Abu Hanifa. I have the Quran and the Sunnah. I said, okay, you don't have to, but are you saying to me I should not follow Imam Abu Hanifa in this aspect of Islamic law? He said, yeah, you should go to the Quran and Sunnah. I said, when you say I'm following the Quran and Sunnah and you need to listen to me, you say follow me. You become Abu Hanifa. You get what I'm saying? He himself, he said, that man is not good, I'm good. It's very important to be humble when it comes to understanding of Islam. But let me come to this concept. Ad-deenu dinan. Deen is two. The text, deen al-munazzal, and the deen application of Islam in the personal life. The deen means the way of life. No. Lakum dinakum waliya deen.
No, this is...
No, excuse me. Let me finish.
Excuse me, it's not a debate here. Let's listen to our speaker. He will finish. We will finish, inshallah, so we can have the next panel.
This
Please.
is an ayah,
After discussion,
no,
please.
This is an ayah, brother. If the ayah is mentioned in the wrong context, it needs to be...
This is not an ayah, brother.
Yes, lakum dinukum waliya din is Surah Al-Kafirun.
No.
And he's talking about Muhammad
Can you...
We're not debating here.
Let me finish. Okay. The word deen in Arabic means way of life. Therefore, a person can adopt any kind of way of life, and it's not word religion, it's his way of life. It's very important. I would like to just explain to you, and we can have discussion. I can give you a list of books to read after we finish. The applications of Islam in a person's life could be different from another person. I give you an example. Islam say wear modest clothes. This is say what color of the clothes. The Muslim Nigerian clothes is colorful and beautiful. The Pakistani clothes and Indian clothes. It is application of Islam. Islam is submission to all of God. Therefore, this submission takes different form and shape. People think Islam in the abstract. Don't think Islam in the abstract. Think Islam in reality. And that's why sometimes people become very defensive because they misunderstand the terminologies.
That's the daily,
yeah, brother.
There is a deen and there is a daily. You are confusing the people. There is a deen and the deen and Allah is Islam. And there is a daily, the form, the way, the interpretation.
I searched the Adinu Dinan in this right here, 3,000.
Let me say something. Assalamu alaikum. Assalamu alaikum. Listen.
There's no such thing as Dinu.
I'll tell you what.
No,
sorry.
Really. Is this the way we behave among ourselves?
No, it's okay. I'm just going to take it from here.
Issues?
With all due respect, and I do appreciate, no disrespect at all. I thank you all. This is definitely a great, sir. Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. It is. We want to thank the panel. Your thoughts are appreciated, sir. Thank you to the panel very much. We do appreciate it. Sir, your points are well taken. And for any extra comments, I do recommend you to call my radio show tomorrow, Rise Up, WNDZ, 12 to 1 p.m. We would love, these are the type of, the energy that we want, and that is why we have an open discussion with educated people.
Please,
sir, we appreciate it. With that said, we did run over a little bit out of time here, and we're about 10 minutes over. So with that said, what we want to do right now is take a break and move on to our fourth panel. However, before we do that, again, we're going to take a short break. Now it's no longer going to be 15 minutes. We're going to do a 5-minute break before we move on to our final panel. Thank you very much. Dr. Sahlul, great job holding it down, if you will. Thank you very much to the panel. And again, coming up in about 5 minutes, imagining our future. And I can tell there's a lot of passion in our future, to say the least. That's coming up.